Hello, welcome to another episode of Trace and Terry with Ade and Joe. We have a very important guest in the house today. But before I get to him, I have my co-host here also with me, Joe. This is the 17th of February, 2026. We're recording on Tuesday. Apparently, yes, 17th of February is Tuesday everywhere. We have an interesting guest in the house, like I mentioned earlier on, and his name is Adam. He has been in this space for like forever. I'll probably say he's one of the OGs in this space. So, but just for me now to kind of like um, do a very an uninteresting introduction of him, I'll allow him to kind of just tell us who he is and all of the stuff. Nice to have you, Adam.
Thank you, Ade. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, I've been in the AML space since 2016. I've been some way involved in financial crime since 2012, and in crypto since 2018. I mean, we can kind of dive into all that as we go, but yeah, it's great to be here. A lot of respect for what you guys are doing in terms of just having the courage to start a podcast in this space. I know we've got our OG content creators out there, but there's nothing out here really like this to where we can organically just have conversations. You've had Rick on before, and I know we've discussed a lot of other people that I think will come on and just have, chill conversations that really are not pushing a certain, typical product or agenda or something like that. And just, having fun conversations about the space and seeing where it grows over the next many months and years.
Yeah, definitely. Nice, nice. Yeah. And Joe, please jump in anytime. I'm not gonna see you.
No, happy. Yeah. No, good to be here. Like you said, February 17th. Actually, my dad's 65th birthday, so shout out to Mr. Lefevre out there. But
Should we sing him happy birthday?
yeah, exactly. Gotta give
Nice.
him a call here later. But Adam, great to have you on, and looking forward to our conversation. And like you said, it's like a good medium, to discuss. I think we're all pretty active on LinkedIn as like a real good funnel of information for our industry, and the crypto compliance world is always evolving and new stuff all the time, and it can be difficult to keep up. So I think kind of like open question forums of just talking and staying connected. Because I think a lot of people too work remote at the same time and maybe a little isolated. I know Ade and I are a bit kind of like on our own islands in some ways, particularly now regarding what we do for our day to day work. So it's always cool to bring people on and just talk and share some ideas. So yeah, happy to get to it.
Cool, cool. And I think I'm just gonna start from here, which is kind of like one of the most basic questions. What got you interested in crypto? How did you find yourself in this wide, wild west?
Yep. So to answer that question directly before we get into the backstories, in 2018, I was working the financial crimes in DC with some of people's in the world's favorite three-letter agencies. And so a case came across the desk of the higher ups, and obviously it's got bank statements and checks and cash and stuff like this, but there was a thing called Bitcoin on it. At the time, none of us really knew what it was, and of course, me and my buddy, being the two younger, newer guys on the team, they come to us and say, "Hey, we don't know what this is. Figure it out." Of course, at first we're like, "You got to be kidding me!" Like, we didn't know what it was, never had heard of it in our lives. We wanted to follow the cash, follow the bank statements. That's where it was at, and all of that stuff. So I think the first week or two we're just kind of like, all right, this is like this mythical play money. Like, all right, we're gonna look at this for a week and just say, yeah, we didn't find anything. However, as we started to just do a little bit of research, and I mean, this took us weeks and months, I think, to really start to change our minds on it. We started having conversations beyond just the investigations aspect of like, hey, they just went to this exchange from this bank account. It was pretty simple. But the bigger conversations were like, there was really something to the way money was transitioning. And if you think of how money has gone since the beginning of the time between bartering and then trading
Mm,
goods and gold and then coins and then paper currency, credit cards, peer to peer apps, the natural transgression of how we've gotten to this point. I don't know what enlightened us in this, but we had this exact discussion and we were like, holy smokes, like this blockchain, this digital asset aspect is just the next logical step in the flow of money and things like that. And so, really, that's kind of when I went down the rabbit hole. Bought a little bit back then. No, I don't still have it at that amount. I sold it.
Shoots.
Sold it a few years. I know. Sold it a few years after that. Got back into it, but oh well. You never go broke taking profits. So,
True.
2018 was the first time I ever, had crypto come across my desk, and kind of from that point on, I knew that was the space I really wanted to focus in. And when you've been in crypto since before COVID, as
Mm,
I'll say, because I think COVID is really when everyone's like, oh, I want to work in crypto. Prior to that time, if you had ever touched it, you're kind of, in my mind, considered an OG in this
yeah.
space. Like, it's like 7 years in crypto is like having 40 years in traditional finance and banking.
I agree. I agree. Wow, that's interesting. Because I would assume then when it was kind of just dropped on your desk, it was more like internet money of some sort, and then just on some specific sort of like this ledger called blockchains that has no tools, no whatsoever you can use. So if I can kind of just a little bit on that first case, because I feel a bunch of guys right now that more or less trying to get into space are either coming from, okay, this crypto thing is now becoming a big thing, stable coins is now becoming a big thing, or for some other set of people who came in through the got scammed or the lost funds. An example is Zach. A part of me also got kind of like, okay, I lost funds, I got it back. I think Joe also was kind of like in that
Yep,
era of losing funds
that's
and
me.
then figuring it out, right? So, when you were going through that first case, was there sort of like thought process around what you needed to do, or it was just more like, okay, I'm figuring this out. It's one address, it's moving to this address, and what exactly am I looking out for?
Yeah, I mean, I will not lie. When it first came to us, I was like, this is stupid. Like, what? Because I Googled Bitcoin, and back then, obviously, the definitions and the teachings were not there. It's like essentially internet money on the ledger and the blockchain, and I'm like, what the heck does any of this mean? And coming from a family of engineers, that switch never clicked into my mind to view
Mm,
it from an engineering sense. Obviously, I understand it now, but I've never been that technical mind to really understand the blockchain at that level. So really, the basis of what the whole case was to understand was we were investigating terrorist financing out of Eastern Europe, and it was pretty simple. I mean, the money flew from U.S. bank accounts into European bank accounts into these Bitcoin wallets and out of these Bitcoin wallets. They were just using it as layering. But at that time, like you said, the TRMs, the elliptics, the chain analysis, even the free tools that we know today did not exist back now. You had your very basic, rough Google, blockchain, like trace this Bitcoin wallet for me type of thing, best you could. And at the time, I didn't really understand what a public ledger was. Like I said, it took me months for us to really understand what it was. However, by being the one that, initially I viewed it as a burden to have it dropped on me, I suddenly became the go-to guy for many crypto things related in DC. And, you meet people and connections, and it's like, hey, do you have someone that can work this crypto case? And then still to this day, I get law enforcement buddies and friends and even people I don't know pop up my phone, hey, can you help me with this case? And I'm like, oh, maybe to some extent, but being in early has its benefits, and just being able sometimes to kind of share the old stories. Like, I think I can't remember the exact year. I want to say it was 2018 was the initial ICO coin dump where just everything just got trashed and burned. Luckily, I remember it. I didn't have anything, so I didn't get burned on it. I know a lot of people did, but to us, we look back at that now and just like it's just part of the environment and the flow in which we understand now. We understand rug pulls and scams and all of that a lot better than kind of what we did back then. But yeah, it was very basic, that initial case of just, hey, help us understand what these wallets mean and what are they really using it for? Like, could they buy stuff with it? No, not really back then. Nowadays, you could buy fine arts, horses, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, whatever you can think. Luxury side on the Bitcoin. Back then, it was really just used as a means of layering. But we knew so little about it that was pretty effective, because over the next 2019, 2020, we saw a lot more illicit actors kind of using Bitcoin, and they really just used it as a means of layering. And then, like I touched on, once COVID hit and everyone went online, that is when or crypto became incredibly mainstream. Whether it was the meme coins, the altcoins, the poop coins, as we all know them by a different words, Bitcoin, everyone wanted to be in this space. Everyone was transacting at it. NFTs, I mean, NBA Top Shots. I don't know if you recall that, worth next to
Mhm.
nothing now, but you could buy LeBrons and Jordans for hundreds of thousands, if not millions. Today, I have a few. I probably couldn't get 2 pennies for them. So it's just incredible how the space has changed in 7, 8-ish years compared to the ways we've viewed banking for, I mean, as long as I can remember my dad using a bank account, it's operated pretty much the same way. You make your deposits, you make your withdrawals. Yeah, they have apps and credit cards and stuff like that, but the concrete principle behind the way the banking system works has not really changed much at all. And crypto's completely flipped it on its head.
Yeah, super interesting, man. Yeah, yeah. I was just gonna say, I mean, being there from the early days and seeing how it's evolved. I mean, I've been in crypto just as an enthusiast since like, yeah, 2015 ish. Just word of mouth from a friend, and yeah, told me about this thing called Bitcoin. It's peer to peer, no middleman. Like, oh, that's pretty interesting. And yeah, I read the white paper. You know, like 'cause in those early days too, people really did think that Bitcoin could be like a payment system. You know, and that's clearly not what it is now. And actually, that's like a big reason why I got rid of my Bitcoin. Unfortunately, that was a mistake. But because I looked at it as like an experimental thing, like, oh, okay, this is why I'm in for it. And then once it became clear that this isn't really a peer-to-peer payment system as Satoshi wanted, I got rid of it. But yeah, that's that story. But it makes me think. It makes me reflect a little bit, like when you mentioned getting on block explorers and stuff. Like I remember the first time I got on like Etherscan back in like probably like 20. I bought ETH a little early too, which was fortunate, not a lot, but and I remember getting on there and thinking like, oh, is this like my wallet? Like, how do I log in? Like, I thought I could, you know, do transactions from it.
Yep. What's
And
this transaction
yeah,
hash? What are all these little peel addresses that come off of it? Yeah. What are all
yeah,
these other wallets that are linked to this wallet that I use? Like, what does that mean?
exactly. I mean, it's funny to come up now. You like look at a Explorer and it's just second nature now. But yeah, it's cool to hear that you've seen it from, you know, the ground floor, like evolve, particularly the compliance industry. I mean, in those days, were you just specifically working with explorers? I mean, since there really was no TRM or chain or whatnot,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
how did you do it? Yeah, okay.
We had no tools because it was not something we ever thought about, and because it was federal international related on a case. You have your own red tape nonsense you've kind of got to follow and stuff like this. So you get access to a lot of information and stuff like that. But I mean, I wish I had a whiteboard or some way to explain it, but we had 10 by 10 foot whiteboards and just walls covered in Excel sheets and then like these
Oh
graphs
wow.
because it, that's just how you did it. Like there was no way to really keep your graphs and understand it. Plus, we're wanting to understand, okay, we've got our bank statements, we've got our cash deposits, our checks, our credit cards, our purchases for luxury goods, whatever they are. Where does Bitcoin come into this? And so the best way to do it sometimes was, I mean, if you've seen the movie The Accountant, just scribbling all over the place, drawing your lines, writing your numbers, having your pieces of paper set up and stuff like that, to where it helped us understand, like, hey, this was really just a layering thing. But yeah, when it came to kind of the block explore stuff, it just helped us to understand, you know, this is the address we're interested in. These other addresses, okay, like do we have any, and this was all very granular and pieced together because the other addresses we then saw meant nothing to us. We're like, okay, like how, like where do they go? What exchange do they go to? Do they end up going to the bank account? Because the only reason we really understood these wallets and this Bitcoin existed was because of the flow of funds from bank statements and other online mentions they had that we just found through kind of OSINT, open source intelligence. If not for that, I mean, we probably never even picked up on the fact they were using kind of Bitcoin to layer and stuff like that. So, so yeah, off of that, it was just very kind of generic in terms of, hey,
Hmm.
how can we piece this together? Because nowadays, I mean, we probably would have been able to put together an entire investigation in about an hour on the crypto side. Back then, it took us months, and even then, you're constantly, hey, what are we because we knew we were missing and not understanding stuff, checking stuff again, going back, okay, how these wallets transacted, are there any more wallets flowing into these wallets and stuff like that. So the pretty graphs that we all kind of know of today did not exist, so it was very meticulous, I guess you could say. And just, I think the way, you know, a lot of people do, whether it's forensic accounting or AML investigations, the way they do it these days, no clue, even 5, 10 years ago, how a lot of these places handled in terms of the amount of pieces of paper we printed off, the whiteboards we used, the amount of walls we would just cover in these spreadsheets and then in these graphs, just to give us a visual to look at because we didn't have it in front of us, kind of all nicely drawn out like we view a chain analysis or a TRM today.
Like makes me think of like that Charlie meme from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia with he's like on the wall like with all the lines and stuff.
Yep.
If you know what I'm talking about, yeah.
Yep, I do. I do. I mean, yeah, and that's very much how it was, just a little bit organized. But yeah, you've got every which direction this person involved. Okay, the money flows to here, but then from here it comes back around here. Yeah, I mean, it was you learn a ton of incredible skills from work like that. You really do. But also, some of those habits are a little sometimes hard to shake in terms of, especially when I'd say 2021, 2022, when really, in my mind, TRM chain analysis, elliptic, those folks became mainstream. I wanted to go down every single rabbit hole just because that was the way my mind was kind of wired in terms of a lot of these more, paper related investigations and just wanting my graphs, my spreadsheets, and being able to look up and see everything and then look back at my computer and say, okay, like here, this links to that. Now let me print this off and go stick that on the wall next to, Ivan's name up there, whoever we're after.
Uh, Jeez.
Interesting. I think just a little bit of thought on this, and I think it's in two ways because I kind of feel like we'll still come back to this moving forward. But in that early days, what was collaborations between the public and the private sector looks like then? Because like you just got your first case, probably ended up in one random exchange, and obviously you've never interacted with these guys before. Like, what was it
Yep.
like then?
It thumbs down. It didn't exist because it wasn't regulated in any way. It If we needed something, you kind of had to go through law enforcement and get warrants and stuff like that. There was very few places. I'm trying to even think of on that particular case, there was no exchange or on ramp off ramp system we worked with that actually worked with law enforcement to provide us that information.
Wow.
So there was no private public sector integration. It is crazy where we are at nowadays, and it's still got a very long way to go. And I'm sure that's something we'll probably touch on here in a bit. But yeah, to answer your question, two thumbs down. It was awful.
Wow, that would have been, yeah, because I would assume, because some of them also from the private side of things were sort of like just trying this thing out, and like, okay, right now we just want to get as many users as possible on our
Yep.
platform, and compliance wasn't really a thing to them. It was more about who can use it and how it can be used rather than for terror financing or CSAM or things of that nature. So yeah, it definitely was Wild West.
Yeah, and kind of off of that point, like that's something I've learned since really coming over to the private sector is give the customers the benefit of the doubt. Most customers are not up to no good. And if they are, for the most part, you're going to be able to catch them at some point. But really, like, if I go in from the compliance perspective and just want to shut down anything that even, might look like, a light shade of red flag, you're not going to have revenue. People aren't going to use your product. So it's really when you've got to kind of, work with the risk team and the product team to understand, hey, where are our absolutely no fly zones? What's kind of our, we're going to look at this with a little more cautious eye. And then what's something you're like, hey, this is something we're willing to have a high risk tolerance on and kind of go from there. So I think you really kind of nailed that on the head, because you've got to develop, before you worry about a law enforcement team, you've got to develop the products, you've got to develop a revenue, a sales team. Then you worry about compliance, regs and stuff like that, then monitoring. Okay, then you can start to build off your law enforcement team. Like that was something I did not understand until I got into some of these many higher roles and have worked with so many of these great companies of exactly the building of a business and how it works. That while I'm still all for, certain types of activity, I mean, shut them down and don't let it go, but also giving the customer the benefit of the doubt and understanding, without these customers and without allowing the business to, grow in some ways, you're not gonna have a job. You're gonna work yourself out of a job.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I just moving a little bit off that topic, to those great companies you mentioned. Can you tell us like what was like the progression from that first case to what the stuff you're doing now right now? Like what was the progression like?
Oh man, night and day. So from that first case, like I said, I'll try to find a photo somehow that I can just share with you guys of what like our charts and graphs used to look like, and just having them up on the wall. But from that day, and then came and worked for Cash App when, I mean, I think our compliance team was like 10 square block Cash App. I think it was like 10 people. Today, I'm sure it's in the hundreds. And obviously, we see certain things about CapEx out there. They've made a lot of progress in a lot of areas, and I think there are a lot of areas they can continue to improve on the financial crime side of space. But that was the first real big glimpse I've got of like, wow, some of these tools are incredible. And then from going with Cash App and working with, some fintechs like Chipper Cash and a crypto company like Telcoin, working for Bitcoin Depot. Yep, everyone's favorite crypto ATM. And then getting into consulting and continuing to do a lot of, work with governments and law enforcement agencies, both in the US and around the world. The way things flow and the way data flows now, and how these graphs make our lives so much easier. It's incredible. And the systems and the alerting technology, you know, I I think there are a lot of companies out there that have done a great job. I think there are a lot that have a long way to go in terms of really understanding the value of a lot of these tools, whether it's, your fraud prevention platforms like a Sardine, or your tracing tools like a chain analysis or TRM, or your law enforcement tools like kind of like a DeConflict or a Codex, and understanding how you can take all of those and put them together to really create, a very rock solid compliance program. And then with the implementation of AI, I think AI is great. I don't think it's ever going to fully replace what we do in compliance. Yes, it can, draft things a little bit better and much quicker and fire through alerts like crazy. But I think there's always going to be the human element of investigations, because I think there's something very real with all investigations, but financial crime investigations, of understanding human psychology and emotions. Yeah, yeah, AI could get there someday. It's not there right now. And I think also it was with law enforcement and FinCEN and other international jurisdictions and agencies, how they handle AI. There's always going to be the human component to it, to where I think it's very important. By no means, and I certainly don't know how to do this, do you need to be able to sit down in AI and just fire through code. But you need to understand how AI works in the compliance and money laundering sphere, whether it's as simple as helping you sort through data, or, just detect patterns and stuff like this. Because if you're not doing that, someone else is. And the three of us have talked about this. I'm sure we've all seen the LinkedIn conversations with Steven and Rick and many other folks of like, you've got to find a way to set yourself apart. At this point, everyone in the space knows how to use a crypto tool. So saying I've got the chain analysis certification, that's great. It doesn't mean anything to me. Saying I've got CAMs, that's great. Doesn't mean anything to me, because I can teach someone how to pick that up in a span of weeks, if not a month. how else are you separating yourselves? And sometimes it comes down to, I mean, soft skills, just like you and me having conversations right now.
Yeah,
Interesting.
definitely. Definitely. I mean, yeah, super interesting. I mean, there's number of things that come to mind with all of that. But I guess going back earlier to what you were saying, Adam, and too, and going off Ade's initial question, like how it's evolved. Like one thing I was wondering about is not only has the workflow and the tools and the collaboration changed, but in that collaboration topic, how people have become more open. I mean, people are somewhat resistant to compliance and yeah, doing the right thing and investigating things today. Like I couldn't even imagine in like 2018 or 2019. And I mean, yeah, I mean, I know that we're like, if you weren't in crypto during that time, if you think it was like, you know, libertarian crowd, like rules don't apply kind of like thing now, like it was like
Yep.
super extreme then. Like I, I was actually traveling and on a vacation like in Southeast Asia and like stopping by at like some meetups in like Chiang Mai just for fun, like Bitcoin meetups, just because as an enthusiast. And some of these people were like super against like any form. Like there's some really diehard like true crypto native people who like are totally against this compliance idea. So I don't know. Maybe in that regard, like how has that evolved? Like you see people have warmed up to it. Like I'm sure that's changed a lot through the years for you as well. Like yeah,
Oh, absolutely. Like, rarely nowadays do I see anyone say ban all of crypto. I actually saw it on LinkedIn the other day of someone's like, we need to outlaw all of crypto. I'm like, okay. I like the sarcastic person to me would be like, all right, well, we're at it. Let's outlaw cars. And, someone
okay,
could fall down the stairs. Let's get rid of stairs. Water. People could drown on water. We better get rid of water. Rarely do you see that approach anymore. Back then, it was, ooh, like, because it was this, I think the word cyber and crypto, if you think of like where most people's minds go when they think that, they think dark web, they think up to no good. And back then, for the most part, there wasn't a whole lot of conversations behind crypto in people really making use of it or having discussions on a daily basis. I would say, again, I think COVID changed so much. That's when the narrative really started to change around the topic. Because I was with Cash App prior to COVID really kicking off. And yeah, we had crypto transactions and stuff, but it wasn't anything crazy. Um, Unfortunately, a lot of them were, not always the best activity. And then once COVID kicked in, everything changed. The entire narrative changed because people went online, and whether it was the whole GameStop and AMC theater stock, and then Dogecoin, like those were the two big catalysts that you get all of these young folks and day traders just going crazy on it. And sometimes it takes moments like that to really change the narrative and the discussion for people to start to realize, wow, I can build a project on this. Wow, I can see the transactions. Wow, instead of it taking 3 days for me to send money to you guys from the US to Europe, it takes 30 seconds. And rather than having to pay a $150 fee because of, bank fees and, international fees, it's a $2.30 fee, or even that. It's
yep,
crazy what, a very unfortunate event like COVID can do for industries like this, to where people realize, hey, we don't need, the banks anymore for our day-to-day interactions. We don't need to be transacting in cash. Like I went in the other day to file my taxes, and like, we don't do paper checks anymore. It's all online. And I was like, well, can I get it in Bitcoin, my refund in Bitcoin? And I'm like, no, not yet. But it just kind of goes to show you how much the narrative really has changed. And I think a lot of it, from what I saw, not just from a compliance perspective, but from, a culture perspective, changed around 2020, 2021. And then as time has gone, we've had these, people crash as, oh, Bitcoin is dead. No, it's not. It's the natural progression of what we need to do to get rid of a lot of these crap projects that are just there to kind of scam people and pump and dumps. It's just something that needed to happen. And every time it's happened, you know, those who are just there to make a quick buck freak out and shout, yell, and throw a fit. But then those of us who understand it, and those of us who want to learn, and then the new folks come along and they start to see more value in, and then they build better and better projects or newer projects off of that. And now I think the big focus is really on stable coins, and everyone and their mother's trying to spin up a stable coin. At some point, we need a stable coin flush. It's going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
but I think with a lot of governments and a lot of banks and a lot of companies who have the legitimate backing, the legitimate funds, and the legitimate infrastructure to support stablecoin projects, this is going to be, I know my dad and people of his generation don't like it. It's going to be the way of the world. And I'd be shocked if it takes us 5, 10 years to where, you're not seeing a whole lot of cash, a whole lot of checks, um, a whole lot of bank visits. Like, I don't remember the last time I went to a bank outside of just, I needed cash for any particular reason. It is crazy if you really think about it, how much the industry has changed. I won't even say since from when I first, had my first crypto case, but over the last 4 or 5 years, it usually takes, technologies and cultures and societies decades, if not centuries, to really adapt and understand things. Where we are today, it's truly, I mean, part of me wants to say insane, but at the same time, I think it's kind of cool to really understand what humanity is capable of when we see value in something.
Definitely.
That's interesting. Yeah, you go ahead, Joe.
No, I was just gonna. I think too, like FTX, and even ironically, when CZ from Binance got first indicted and prosecuted, now he's back in the news. But like, I think those were big moments as well.
Yep.
That like where compliance and crypto like came to the main stage. Yeah, these were kind of momentous moments. But well, every moment is momentous. But maybe we can, while we're on it, we can switch topics a little bit. I know Adam, you wanted to maybe touch on like also hiring now in the compliance crypto world and how that's I guess evolved and like what are contemporary like issues with it or what you're seeing. Yeah, I don't know if you would want to touch on that now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And before I touch on that real quick, to your
Yeah.
point about kind of FTX and Binance and like Voyager's one I used to use and Celsius, they
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
crashed and
exactly.
they
Yeah.
burned. But I think there was a level of comfort of people got that, some people are not above the law. Like there are programs in place, there are crimes and financial crimes and justice to be had. And I think that gave some people a level of comfort of like, okay, like, hey, maybe this isn't as much as the wild, wild west as we kind of thought. To jump into the hiring aspect of things, it is great. Like, I don't know many people nowadays that don't reach out of wanting to understand, hey, how can I get into cryptocurrency? Um, my LinkedIn inbox is full of them. My emails are full of them, and in one aspect, I think it's awesome. In another aspect, I mean, I've done this long enough at a number of companies that I understand. Some people are just kind of wanting to chase the shiny object, and those are the folks that kind of crash out and burn in the space because traditional finance skills don't always translate to crypto. Some of the best investigators I work in, one, she used to be a waitress. One guy used to be a psychologist. And then the second best, or the third best one I can think of was kind of into graphic designs. No finance, no accounting, no law enforcement, no criminology. So that just goes to show you that, like, their traditional mindset that I think banking and compliance and AML had doesn't always carry over. It's who can understand and has the creative mind to piece together these investigations. By now, by no means am I saying, hey, if you have AML experience, it's not going to work. Most of the people that work in this space have prior AML experience. But I think, and I'm sure jump in at any point, there are many kind of topics we can cover. The first thing is I'm hiring, whether it's been in consulting with strategy bricks, in full-time roles with companies, or even kind of working with law enforcement on cases is like, can you listen to directions? And I won't throw any names out there, but the number of people on LinkedIn, like I will make a post and I say, hey, if you're interested, fill out this form. They'll DM me, hey, can you send me this form? Where can I fill out this form at? Hey, I applied. Hey, can I get your email address? And I'll be like, fill out the form. And, two people the other day just said, can you send me the form? I just didn't even reply because, I mean, for a number of reasons. One, I don't have time to, babysit and send everyone that doesn't want to listen to the form. Two, just go to my LinkedIn. The form's right there. And three, if you can't listen to those most basic steps, how are you going to be when an investigation doesn't go your way? How are you going to be when myself or an examiner or a teammate, challenges or questions, hey, why'd you do that? Or, hey, I don't quite agree with actioning this case, or why didn't you action this case? Or if when it comes into like, hey, rule tuning or even SAR writing, there are so many little nuances to where being able to communicate and listen and then take those ideas and clearly stand on your ground. The question I've always told every single investigator, and even my bosses above me that I've worked with when it came to a case, is if I'm challenged on a case and everything I know, the facts, the assumptions, the transactions, the KYC, the graphs, everything, do I have more to stand on by actioning it or not actioning it? That's what I've always asked myself. If Joe were to come to me and say, hey, I'm Joe, the examiner for the SEC. Why did you not take action on this case? And I can stand there and say, well, Joe, I didn't take action for these 3 reasons. And I can speak it honestly and truthfully based on my facts. Well, then we're good to go. If I'm challenged on something and I'm shaky and, well, now that you say that, and I'm kind of going back and forth, like, rarely do you have a closed and shut kind of investigation. But I think the most important thing you can ask yourself is, if you do have a case where you're not sure of on, ask yourself, based on everything I know, with the facts and with the investigation and the information I have, if I were to be asked or challenged on this case, which side do I feel most comfortable standing on and supporting through and through? Because we're not politicians here. We can't flip-flop our vote every single day. You've got to pick a decision on an action and stick with it unless new information comes to light. So listening, communicating are the 2 big things. I've seen a lot of conversations lately on LinkedIn about people and certifications. I have talked with many people at my level, above, and below. Certifications are not what they used to be. I personally don't. If you have experience and can explain to me, hey, I want to interview for this job, I've put together a little walkthrough of how I would do an investigation, that matters 10 times out of 10 more to me than if you've got CAMS, CFE, and chain analysis certification. Yeah. I can go out and get 10 certifications and plaster them on the wall behind me. Most people I know don't care. I know some places are still like, hey, this is preferred. There's a level of, yeah, hey, you can sit down, you can listen, and you can pass a test. Maybe it was because I was an awful test taker my entire career and, I just despise tests and stuff like that. But I think the big value is, and it's something we talked about a little bit earlier, is like how can you set yourself apart? So many people have these certifications nowadays. And there's great value in the certifications. There is, because you learn new tricks. You learn how to use the tools. You learn things you might not typically know. But no longer is having those certifications enough to where if I've got 5 people in front of me, and one of them has 2 certifications, that's the person I'm going to go with. Those days are long gone. I'm looking for a well-rounded individual now, understanding that, at any single moment, a CEO or a head of investigations or a director of financial crimes or law enforcement can come knocking and have questions about a particular case or particular individual. Because I work with so many investigators around the world and so many task force and teams, I might not have the answers. I need to know if I've got to go to someone on my team and say, hey, Billy, this case came across my desk. These 3 individuals would like to talk to you about it. That, I can sit in that conversation with Billy, but to trust he can clearly articulate his findings to them to help them understand. The other big thing I would kind of say is reputation. And the reason I say reputation is because there have been a number of folks that, have come through the pipeline that, on resume, their resume looks great. They've got crypto experience. They've worked at ABC places. And I'm like, wow, this is a home run hire. I am big. I check with my people. The value of a net. What is the value of a network if you don't check in with your network and connect? That's the point of LinkedIn. I do my homework
Right.
because whether it's I'm working with a team in Estonia, whether I'm working with a task force in the U.S. on human trafficking, or whether I'm working on just a basic AML case for a cryptocurrency exchange here in the U.S., I want to make sure I have the best people on my team, not just the resume that looks the prettiest or the person that can interview like no one's business. And so I will ask around. I will say, hey, I saw you worked with this person for a few years. What'd you think of them? And people are usually going to be pretty honest. And I think that's for two reasons. One, by nature, humans are not liars. And the second thing is our reputations and our referrals follow us. There are a lot of good friends I have in my life that I would not refer those guys or gals for a job no matter what. They might be
Same.
great to work out with, to hang out with, to, just, talk about life with. I'm not going to tie my professional name and reputation to them. And so when I ask around and I hear, very combative, not good to feedback, took a long time to ramp up, constantly was not meeting SLAs, companies aren't going to fire these folks just because they're not, checking the boxes because there's so much that goes into hiring. But that reputation follows you. And, there have been cases where someone has reached out to me and said, hey, do you know anything about this individual? And I may not have worked with this individual, but from just conversation with them or something else that someone else has told me, I'll sit down with that individual and I'll say, hey, I sat down with them. I asked them to complete this. They couldn't even complete the case study or the task I sent them. If you need more information on a first-hand account, please go check with them. Because I also think it's very important, we don't gossip and play like middleman. So, always
Yeah.
pass someone to like that initial source if you can. But your reputation is very valuable. And I think that's where, as we touched on, I think both of you touched on early on, the remote work aspect of everything we do. There are days like, man, I wish I could just give someone a hug. Like we sit at a desk all
Yeah.
day. Like, I mean, I most nights I've just gotten back into jujitsu and martial arts, and that is the
Oh,
highlight of
cool.
my day because you're around people again. You're collaborating. You're hanging out with people that just you're human again. And as humans, human beings are not meant to be alone. Whether we're talking on, a personal level or professional level, remote work is great. I love it. I mean, you'd have to pay me $500,000 to get my butt back in an office. But there's something very real to be said about, that human connection that even as we're chatting here, like I'm still looking at you to the screen, like I look to my left or my right and no one's there. And we can still have genuine conversations. But, for me and a lot of the things I learned in DC, body language is important to me. Like I use my hands a lot when I talk, or like, if someone's tapping their foot a lot, that's a tip off of, hey, maybe they're not real comfortable in this situation and stuff like that. You're not always going to be able to pick up on things like that. Um, in a remote environment. So I think another thing that really pays dividends in a remote environment and getting a job is finding outlets in which you can engage with human beings. And so you say, okay, how can I relate this back to crypto? Conferences, certain of these certifications are in person, your local ACAMS chapter, your local CFE chapter, reach out to your local police department and say, and chances are they might be like, hey, like, we can't do that right now. There have been some that I know, folks I've said, done this to. They'll go reach out to, Billings, Montana's police department and say, hey, I've done crypto investigations for 3 years. On the side, I'd like to help you guys with cases. And they will take them on. You don't become a cop, but, it's just kind of something on a side. And that's just another way for you to grow your skill set, to build your reputation, to build your connections. And sometimes if it goes well, they start sending you to conferences. They'll pass you on to other folks. So there's a whole lot of ways we can take things that we do in our daily lives and ask ourselves, hey, how can I then relate this back to my career path and getting a job in crypto? And, you kind of see that moment come full circle when you do things like that.
That's so profound because like I wanted to make a joke in there with regards to the reputation stuff because like I think one other thing where reputation also is very important is such that you don't end up hiring a DPRK agent. So, but yeah,
Yep.
I think that's so very profound because like yeah, for all of those things you've shared, communication, reputation, being able to speak to what you're doing and not just having a bunch of certifications to just show off, but actually understanding the context of what you're doing and being able to defend it. Like, I think those are really, really great advice. And I'm kind of like, okay, I can't take notes, but yeah, I'm glad that this is recorded because yeah, definitely those are things that are very valuable. So yeah, thanks for that. But I think I'm just going to quickly touch on the law enforcement aspect of what you do, and that is the conflicts. Because I think when I was kind of like discussing this with you on LinkedIn, I was like asking what exactly is the difference between the conflict and codex, and then you mentioned
Yep.
there's actually a very big difference between those. So yeah, if you can just kind of like tell us what exactly is the conflict, what did it do, and how is it different from codex, that would be awesome.
Absolutely. So Codex, love the guys over there. Matt, the CEO, great guy, great friend. AJ, I call him their little conference crusader. I mean, that man travels to more cities in a week than I probably have in my entire life. And happy to connect you with them and see what can happen. So Codex is a law enforcement request and subpoena, portal. So if I'm working for, let's say, I'm trying to think of a client they've got. I think they just Coinbase.
Cracking,
Let's say
yeah.
Kraken was the one they just got the other day. So I'm with Kraken, and law enforcement wants to communicate with me. Back in the days of most places I've been, it was done via compliance@companyname.com or law enforcement request at companyname.com. And it goes into this email, and okay, we get this email, we take it, we throw it in our spreadsheet. One company I was at, our law enforcement request in the span of 2 years went from a few hundred in a year to a few thousand. And we're tracking all of this in spreadsheets. So you've got multiple people in that spreadsheets filtering, things go awry. Data is entered incorrectly, accounts, and it becomes you send law enforcement the wrong stuff. Not a good thing. So Codex's platform is basically if I'm law enforcement and I want to subpoena some information or get some information from Kraken, I log on, I type up my information, I hit submit, it goes through Kraken, who is also a member of Codex. They get that subpoena, they get the information I need, and this is all very secure, very encrypted on the Codex platform. All the communications, all the files, all the interactions take place within Codex. And having seen the Codex system before, and Matt and AJ, if I get incorrect, I know they'll correct me. You can see all of your cases and all of the information and the requests you've got in there. So you don't have to worry about tracking them on a spreadsheet and clicking, okay, we submitted this one, well, we emailed this one back. I don't think we've done this one yet. And it's all in one place. DeConflict has nothing to do with law enforcement subpoenas or law enforcement requests. The entire premises of DeConflict comes from the law enforcement mindset of, let's say the three of us are law enforcement. Joe's working for Berlin police, Ade's working for the Italian police, and I'm working for Atlanta PD. We come across the same cryptocurrency wallet. Typically, we would have no clue the three of us are actually looking into the same wallet. That idea behind DeConflict, and this has been a problem, even though I'm not credentialed law enforcement, this has been a problem that I've heard about and seen with law enforcement since I've ever started working with them way back in the day, so to speak, was the ability to understand who else is working on the case. If someone else is working on the case, how can I share information with them? Because law enforcement is very protective of, their cases and their information, which I share. We all got to put, bread on the table. And so the idea of DeConflict is the three of us are working on it. We're in the DeConflict platform with our, verified and approved law enforcement IDs. I log in one day and I see you two pop up. Oh, hey, these guys are working on the same wallet address. And suddenly we can communicate. And the beautiful thing about this is that DeConflict also, we have something called Nexus now. Think of it as Telegram for cops, for law enforcement, and Interpol and agencies and the U.S. military and anyone in that space that does investigations. Now you can just kind of hop on there. And rather than, having to use a portal, so to speak, and, send encrypted emails on the system back and forth, you've got this basically Telegram for cops called Nexus now, to where we can
Nice.
all basically just engage, have a conversation, say, hey, we've been working on this case. Here's what I found. Have what you found. And then maybe 3 days later, oh, hey, I don't know if you guys seen this, but this wallet is also now linked to this account. And it says it goes to, this exchange in Latvia. Ade, do you have anything on this exchange that you might be able to share? So it's very much more bent on kind of making it easier for law enforcement to communicate with each other. And DeConflict, we're also expanding, into the compliance space and creating essentially like signals or kill chains, so to speak, to where
Mm.
those, whether it's law enforcement or companies that use our systems, they're able to plug into the API and through the data and through law enforcement recommendations and law enforcement, flags and our own kind of, AIs, constantly just systems. All these companies do it. They're scraping the web. They're pulling these information to say, hey, this is a new wallet that has popped up, or this is a wallet that has alerted, and it shoots out that signal, so to speak, to anyone within the system. And the idea is to basically create a kill chain that kills the use of that wallet right then and there. So if it goes to, let's say Anchorage Digital is using our system. Something goes to them. They get that kill chain. That activity is going on within their platform. They can kill it right then and there, freeze that account, and it just is one less kind of layer in a rabbit hole law enforcement has to go down. So, I mean, Codex is great. I've known about it for 4 years now. It's crazy, I'll let them tell the story someday of how it started and where it's kind of come from today. But Codex and Deconflict, we go, very well together as having, the kind of the law enforcement and the compliance AML tie-in, but they are, very, very different
So different.
products.
Cool, cool. Actually, because I think first thing is, yeah, you're right on what the case management system of Codex looks like. Because I actually did use it at Theta also. So yeah, you're right about that. So basically, so what I'm getting for Deconflict is essentially it's an intelligence sharing platform for both the public and the private sector
Yep.
right now. Okay. Now,
Yep. But
my
the
question,
one thing
yeah.
I will say is obviously given the sensitivity of law enforcement cases more often than not, you know, Billy Bob at Kraken can't just log in and
Yeah.
see everything going on with law enforcement. It is very well kept tight, and you've got to be well vetted. And we go through quite a rigorous process to ensure anyone on the law enforcement side is who they say they are, and that information is very secure and clean and well kept from the public eye.
Yeah, okay. So it's need to know basis, which is a very important
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
Okay. So one question which I'm just kind of thinking randomly. One question I have on that is, so there is definitely a lot of intelligence being generated from the the public sector side of things. Like law enforcement have access to just about anything. An exchange most likely would have access to whatever they're getting from the analytics tool, from their customers. But outside of that, law enforcement have various sources, different kind of sources, right? So, have there been conversations, or is there a way that the conflict is at sort of like bridging that intelligence silo gap? Because I think that's something that exists right now in crypto. Um, Certain things you'll find on TRM, certain things you'll find on Chainalysis, certain things you'll find on Elliptic. There is a little bit of intelligence silos here and there. And I understand that that is also coming from a commercial point of view. I want to have the best tool. My tool should be able to do XYZ. I have best attribution on this category or that category. But with regards to the conflict being majorly a public sector kind of like intelligence sharing platform, how is that gap in intelligence being bridged, especially with other tools in the space?
Yep. Yeah. So that's something, recently, we've really started to launch and start to push forward is the private sector and the compliance aspect, because there's always got to be that level of separation just given, you've got to protect law enforcement in their cases and kind of what they're up to. DeConflict also is not in the game like an elliptic or a chain analysis in a TRM of all of the risk scores and graphs and stuff like that. Very much based on intelligence sharing off of that. So if you kind of have on the compliance side, and this is something we're really trying to work hard to kind of figure out and stuff like this, is how can we now, because compliance departments can, by plugging into these signals, start to get alerts on a lot of these wallets and a lot of these attributions and a lot of law enforcement data. If Matt Hogan, everyone's favorite Connecticut police officer, were to log in on to DeConflict and say, hey, here's a wallet I flagged, everyone in that system is going to get that signal. We've already kind of got that sharing. Now we're working on building out kind of what I think you're kind of getting on is, hey, is there a way these companies can interact with law enforcement and share that intelligence? And that is, to me, and I think to a lot of the DeConflict team, the answer is absolutely yes. However, being on the private side of it, I understand why those companies are a lot less, willing. Because having worked at other companies, and I, being one of these souls myself, and I salute the guys and gals that do it, there will be a lot of companies or a lot of cases in law enforcement world called exigency. They're very important, very urgent cases that we can't wait weeks for a subpoena. We can't wait weeks for a warrant. We need to address it now. That I know I can call people at certain companies and say, hey, man, I've got this little 8-year-old girl who was kidnapped. I've got this 12-year-old who's being trafficked. I just got a ping. I need to know this now. And they will drop everything they are doing to help me on that case. Yeah. Now, if they went to their chief compliance officer boss and said, hey, boss, man, guess what I did the other day? That chief compliance officer would lose their mind. And, that's the kind of information and sharing that I think we need to have without kind of the fear of retribution. And I applaud the folks that do it. I've done it myself. I think it's a great thing. These private sector folks that are willing to kind of, be humans, be good people, and look out for the better interest of mankind and society and help law enforcement on cases like that. Because in a perfect world, we'd be able to link law enforcement and compliance department teams together and be able to share intelligence left and right. Unfortunately, as we kind of just, go full circle back to the beginning, these compliance teams and these companies, money is the name of the game. It's about revenue. How can we protect our customers? How can we, protect our products without, ruining trust of customers to where if they think, hey, these guys are just, sharing law enforcement intelligence left and right, are they going to back off from using our platforms? So I think that is the great unknown, but also the great challenge we're trying to solve right nowadays. Because challenge one was just getting law enforcement to really all engage. I think we've got more than 800 agencies, including, overseas in the U.S. military.
That's
I
great.
think alone there are 34,000 police departments in the U.S. I could be wrong. I think that's right. So we've barely even scratched the surface of, how well can agencies share. And then, beyond crypto wallet addresses, if people are able to start sharing email addresses and account numbers, usernames, whether it's, I don't know, with popular kids, like I know Roblox, I don't know how that works, but like gaming systems, sharing usernames on that. It's about taking what we've got now and especially expanding it. And then, working with these companies on the private side, so to speak, and giving them kind of that peace of mind of, hey, this is the way you used to do things. Here's a new, better way of doing things. And here's how we can help bridge the gap with your current tools, whether it's your current AML system, just plug and play DeConflict, whether you're using Codex for your subpoenas, okay, and understanding, hey, now I want to understand who else on this case is using this information and also might be working on the same case to hopefully, wrap up and just collaborate better. Because I think at the end of the day, and I think we're approaching an hour here, so to go full circle, way back to when, I first got into financial crimes. We can tell the story another day, but one of the things that I've always come up with was, particularly as it pertains to human trafficking, but you can apply it to all financial crimes, is if I can help someone or save someone from human trafficking or financial crime, what might that person go on to achieve in their life and maybe even change the world?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I've always asked myself. And I think that's what we all need to kind of ask ourselves in this space, because I know some days, it's hard and it's monotonous and it's goes on and we do the same thing, but you never know. But that one case that you might not want to work or might not want to give your full attention, if you do, who it might actually impact down the road. And I think, as much as we'd like to know how our cases end, it's the unknown thing sometimes of knowing, hey, I might have just changed this person's life for the better by getting them out of trafficking, preventing them from being scammed, by blocking their account because it was taken over. So it's just things like that, and being able to take all of the amazing skills that people have in this space, but also applying, the caring human side of it as well.
Definitely.
So yeah, go ahead, Joe. Yeah, that's really good.
No. I mean, all great points, Adam. And yeah, I mean, like you said, the monotonous side of things or the cynical side of things, because you see a lot of people on hard times getting scammed and losing life savings, and more often than not, unfortunately, there's not a whole recovery is not really possible. So finding these success stories and reminding yourself that the work matters, and it's always an uphill battle, I think, for people like us in compliance and investigations, and focusing on the good moments are important, and so it's a good point. It we're wrapping up on time, but it made me think too, like this uphill battle we always have. Like I do think that's a good place where AI could come in, but that's a conversation for another day that we can get to. So this has been great. So Ade, do you have anything?
Yeah, definitely. I think one last thing I want to say is definitely we are still going to have Adam back on this show. So
yes.
Definitely this year. I kind of feel like we've barely scratched the surface, and
I got case stories for days, and I mean, like we talked about, there's a whole slew of other avenues we can go. So I mean, it's been great, guys.
Definitely, and we do appreciate you kind of taking time to join us on these our rambling sessions, as I used to call them. So yeah, it's been nice having you on, and sure would have you again sometime this year to kind of like have these discussions. But you've been a great guest. You've shared a lot of stuff from guys just joining in to folks that experience in the space to law enforcement side. You kind of like have that rounded experience, and I'm sure our listeners would definitely enjoy it. I have enjoyed it, and I actually have taken notes of certain things which are okay. You know what? This is something I should do, and I will do more of it. So it's nice having you on here. We really appreciate it, and we are going to call it a day, a night, whatever, on this right now. So thank you guys for listening, for staying to the end. If you have anything you want us to kind of talk on, or you can obviously reach out to Adam on LinkedIn. We'll definitely leave his LinkedIn URL on Spotify and YouTube for whoever wants. So please don't message him on forms.
Yeah, and if the job says it's only for hire in the U.S. or Canada, I can't hire you in Nigeria or Indonesia or India. I'm sorry.
Yeah, definitely. So please do well and have a very constructive or intriguing question to ask. And yeah, it's nice having you again once more. So thank you for joining. And I think this is going to be the end. Peace.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.